Some places don't echo back, they answer. In the Colorado high country, silence has a mouth. Tonight you will hear it. A miner's cabin above the trees that breathes when you do, that writes "be quiet" on glass you cannot reach. A pass where a simple two-note whistle follows your brake lights, climbs into your truck, and clicks the passenger belt in the dark. A chairlift after closing that forgets to turn and carries last chair into a row of towers that are not on any map. 3 true stories told by the people who came down changed. No jump scares, no monsters with names. Just wind that learns your rhythm, radios that repeat what you have not said yet, and frost that knows how to spell. You think you know mountains, they know you better. They know how you breathe, how you answer when you'll stand up. Lean in, keep listening. Because up here, the moment you stop paying attention is the moment something old decides to ride home with you. I don't care how tough you think you are. Spend one night alone in a dead miner's cabin above the tree line, and you'll find out what kind of breath you have left when something else starts breathing with you. It was late September, that thin time when the aspens go gold and the air above 11,000 feet feels like glass. I drove up from Buena Vista past St. Elmo, bouncing along the rocks toward Tincup Pass. The sign said 12,154 feet. The sky looked close, scraped raw by peaks. My plan was simple: shoot some photos at Mirror Lake, sleep in the truck, and be down before the first snow. But the wind pushed in fast, hard and cold like a warning. By the time I got near the old ghost cabins, daylight had thinned out into slate. A small cabin tilted in the willows, roof patched with rusted tin, stovepipe leaning like a crooked finger. There was a faded Forest Service notice tacked to the door: "Use at your own risk." I laughed because of course I did. The high country does that to you, makes you feel like rules are for other people. Inside, it smelled like old creosote, wet ash, and mouse droppings. The floor sloped toward a corner where a broken bucket sat in a crust of ice. I could hear the wind turn sharp at the edges, trying to cut its way inside. The cabin walls had that old log sound, settling, creaking, dry as bones. I set my sleeping bag on a narrow bunk, shook my hands to get feeling back, and coaxed a small fire in the potbelly stove until the metal pinged with heat. That's when I heard the voice. At first it was soft, like someone sighing through a pipe, a drawn-out hush that seemed to fit itself into the flue. Then, almost under the crackle of the wood, a rasp: "Shut it." I stood perfectly still. The wind hissed at the seams, the fire breathed. A person's voice can bounce strangely in a tiny room. I told myself it was the draft talking, the stove knocking, nothing more. I went to push the door tight against the latch. The hinges complained. "There," I said, because sometimes talking out loud makes you sound braver than you feel. The stovepipe ticked, then another word wrapped around the ticks: "Breathe slow." Something about the way it said slow made my skin crawl. It wasn't even the word, it was the spacing, like it was hearing me and copying me. I took a breath. The cabin took a breath. I exhaled. Something else did too, behind the walls, deeper and wider, like the whole room had lungs. I held my breath, eyes on the door. The noise stopped. I let it out and the sound started again, whispering with my air, a chorus of tiny breaths stacked inside the big one, like old men down a shaft trying not to cough. "It's just the wind," I said, but my voice came out too fast. The phrase you learn in the high country if you drink with the locals. "It's just the wind" is what people say when they don't want to name what they really heard. I went to check the window. Frost had begun to sketch thin white branches on the inside of the glass, like a tree of veins. I rubbed it with my palm and froze. Letters were writing themselves under the frost, one shaky line at a time. "Be quiet." I stumbled back, knocked my light off the bunk. The room went black except for the red eye of the stove. In the dark, the breathing got louder. The logs groaned softly, then settled. From the floor, under the ragged rug, came a long, low sound like air moving through chaff. I bent down without thinking, fingers finding a seam. There was a trapdoor under the rug. The wood around it had the shine of old hands. As I touched the iron ring, the stovepipe flexed and whispered so close to my ear it felt wet. "Don't scratch." I hadn't been scratching anything, but the ring lifted by itself. The trapdoor cracked open a finger's width, and a slow, cold breath rose up from whatever was under the floor, wet, deep, and hungry, like a mine exhaling after being closed for a winter. Then, from the darkness below, something took a longer breath, like it had finally found the rhythm of mine. I froze with my hand on the iron ring. The crack in the floor was a thin, open mouth, and cold air slid over my fingers like a tongue. I leaned closer without meaning to, like the way you edge toward a drop just to see how far it goes. The breath rose again, deeper this time, pulling at the tiny hairs on my wrist. "Close it," I whispered, not sure if I was talking to myself or to whatever could hear me. The stove ticked like a clock that had learned to talk. My phone light cut a weak cone through the gap. All I could see at first was wood, old boards slick with black shine, frost blooming in the seams. Then the beam found a pair of nail scratches right under the trap, not random scrapes but letters, dug in over and over until they bit into the grain. "Should I breathe slow?" "Okay," I said. "Okay," saying it did not make it true. The ring was cold and greasy in my hand. When I pushed down, something pushed back soft as a glove at first, then harder. My palm met another palm in the dark. It wasn't warm. It wasn't exactly a hand either. It'd give like wet cloth stuffed with sand. I yanked back. The breath below changed. It matched me, then led me, pulling my exhale longer until my chest burned. I felt stupid panic surge up, the kind that makes you gulp air. As soon as I did, the thing below inhaled like I'd fed it. "Don't," the stovepipe rasped, the word writing in the metal. "Don't scratch." I wasn't scratching anything, but the cabin remembered scratches. The floorboards quivered under my knees. I slammed my heel on the trapdoor, trying to make it drop. The door moved a hair. The iron ring jerked against my fingers like something had hooked it from below. The window sang with ice. New letters crawled out from the frost like veins growing fast. "Be quiet, HES hungry." The heat in the stove faded to a red, dull eye. Smoke curled out the seams instead of up. The room's air got thicker, heavier, like I was breathing syrup. Mine air, I thought, though I didn't know the right word for it. Black damp, old-timers called it. Air that steals. I went for the door. The latch was stuck. My breath came fast and shallow now, and the thing below drank everyone like a thirsty dog. The floor lifted a little, then fell, the whole cabin taking a slow, greedy lungful. From below came small sounds, not words, more like men trying not to cough. "Please," I said to who I don't know. I cracked the window with my boot. The pane shattered. Night rushed in with a scream. The trapdoor slammed on its own as the draft tore through. Ash and soot blew up out of the stove and whirled around me, stinging my eyes. Something below howled without a sound, more feeling than noise, a long no that made my teeth ache. I tore the door open and fell into the dark. Snowflakes hit my face like sand. The cabin behind me exhaled a black cloud through the stove, a heavy breath that rolled out of the chimney and spread low along the ground, like fog that didn't want to rise. In the cloud I thought I saw shapes, old lamp halos, the suggestion of faces held together by smoke. I ran. The truck door stuck and then gave with a jump. I slid in, choking, and twisted the key. The engine caught like it had been waiting. As the heater blew, the windshield fogged from the inside. In the fog, letters wrote themselves from left to right, slow as a finger on skin. "Breathe slow." I drove down the pass in four-wheel low, white-knuckled, feeling something sitting in my chest that wasn't mine. I didn't camp in the truck. I didn't stop in St. Elmo for a photo. I didn't stop at all until the lights of Buena Vista looked like a soft place I could fall. At home, I told myself it was wind and thin air and fear. I told myself a lot of things, but there was a voice memo on my phone I didn't remember starting, 23 minutes long, just me breathing in the cabin. I put in earbuds and hit play. For the first minute it was my breath, fast and shaky. Then it wasn't just mine. Something older found the gaps between my inhales. It stretched my exhales into long, hungry ropes. Around the 11-minute mark, a breath kept going after mine stopped. It pushed into words, using my air like a mold. See you at home. I don't play it anymore. I don't need to. At night, when the furnace kicks on and the house walls creak, the sound matches me. If I hold my breath, the room holds its breath too. When I let it out, the floorboards answer, slow and careful, the way you do in a place where noise makes something wake up. The cabin wanted me to shut it. I did. But whatever was under the floor learned how I breathe. And sometimes, right before sleep, frost blooms on my bedroom window from the inside, and a finger I can't see writes the same word, small and patient, over and over until the pain goes white. Quiet. If you ever hear someone whistling on Red Mountain Pass after midnight, don't answer. That's what the old truckers say. I didn't listen. I answered. And I'm still trying to sleep with what climbed into my cab that night. I was running parts from Montrose to Silverton, late February, a moonless night when the snow looks blue and the drop-offs look bottomless. The avalanche gates were open, the chain law off, but the road felt empty in a way that makes you check your mirrors too much. My lights swept over those tall orange snow poles. Ridges of plow ice lined the edges like ribs. The $1 million highway took me up in slow switchbacks, the kind where one mistake is your last. I kept the radio on the trucker channel just for company. Static, then a voice far away talking about a jackknifed rig near Mola's. Nothing near me. The world shrank to the white stripe and the black drop to my right. My uncle used to do avalanche control up here. He'd warned me once, dead serious. Don't whistle on red, don't even hum after dark. You'll call him. Back then I laughed. That night I bit my tongue to keep from humming. I heard it 3 switchbacks past the Red Mountain summit. At first I thought it was wind carving the guardrail. A thin, clean 2-note whistle like someone just testing a tune. Not close, not far. Behind me, exactly where my taillights would stop. I clicked the radio down. The whistle stayed. It rose and dipped as I slowed for ice like it was pacing me. Wind, I told myself, but the hair on my arm stood up under my jacket. No birds, no people, not at that hour. I turned the heater down. The whistle got louder, not softer like I'd made room for it. A cold metal smell seeped into the cab, wet rock and iron. Out of the corner of my eye, the snow poles started to hum in sequence, one note hopping to the next as if something was running a finger along them. It moved faster than I was driving. It was wrong. Up ahead, a turnout by an old mine headframe showed a scatter of red reflectors. I thought I saw a shape at the edge, a person in a dark coat with their back to me. Arm up, elbow out like they had 2 fingers between their lips. I slowed. I cracked the window. Hey, you okay? The whistle stopped. Nothing but engine noise and the soft hiss of my tires. Then, so close to my ear I jerked, a whisper came from the glass itself, as if the window could speak. Don't answer. I snatched my hand back from the switch. The radio popped with static. A driver's voice broke through, shaky. 90 to anyone northbound, keep moving. Mile 90's awake. Then his voice slid into the same 2 notes. The radio shouldn't whistle. It did. I eased past the turnout. No footprints. No car. Just a smooth white edge in darkness. The whistle came again, from under the floorboards now, under my feet, like the road had a slit in it and the night was breathing through the crack. I know I said I wouldn't mention breath, but that's how it felt. A sound that moved inside your mouth even with your lips closed. I hit the narrows, that tight cut where the rock leans over the lane. Something tapped the roof once, sharp as a knuckle. My dash lights dimmed and flared. The whistle crawled up the back of my neck. Without thinking, stupid habit, I whistled a single short reply. Just a tiny answer, like saying what, in a place you shouldn't speak. The sound that came back was glad. It lengthened. It leaned into me. At the next switchback, a flare burned in the road, bright orange, spitting. I braked and stopped. The passenger lock popped up by itself. The door tugged, heavy in the wind, and opened 2 inches. Snow hissed in, fine as salt. The seatbelt slid out with a slow snake sound and crossed the empty passenger seat, clicking into the latch. I didn't turn, I didn't move. The whistle didn't come from outside anymore. It came from the spot beside me, from a mouth I could not see, shaping the next note right at my cheek. Snow hissed in, fine as salt. The passenger door shut itself with a soft, careful pull, like a polite hand didn't want to slam it. The belt tightened across the empty seat with a second click, snugging something that wasn't there. The fabric dipped. The cab chilled in a way the heater couldn't touch, the smell of wet iron and old rock rolling off that empty space like steam off a mine. I didn't look. I put the truck in drive, eased around the flare, and let the Jake brake growl low to keep me on the inside lane. The whistle kept the same 2 notes, friendly now, almost pleased, slipping between the beats of the engine. It leaned close, so close I could feel my ear try to close against it. "Where do you want to go?" I said before I could stop myself. The 2 notes rose a half step. They weren't words, but they answered. It wanted me to stop. It wanted me to open the window wider. It wanted a door, any door, open. I kept both hands on the wheel. The next curve hugged a cut into the cliff, sheer ice to the gutter. The seatbelt on the passenger side tugged forward like someone was reaching for the wheel too. The glass fogged by my face even though I just cracked the window. A round patch appeared in the fog as if a mouth had pressed there and breathed. No lips, just a circle, perfect, wet and patient. Above us came a soft, heavy whump, the sound my uncle taught me to fear, a slab letting go. The whistle paused as if listening, then trilled a quick run that made my teeth hurt. Snow dust burst across the headlights from the slope on the right, a pale phantom riding the wind downhill. I could taste it, dry and bitter. The radio hissed and then a voice broke through. "9-0 to anyone northbound, keep," the speaker's breath caught. The line slid into those 2 notes without a break. "Don't answer," the glass whispered again. But it was my own voice now, thin and wrong, playing back at me from the window. I reached for the defroster, turned it to high, and opened both front windows all the way. Arctic air knifed in. The whistle didn't blow away. It ran along the top seam of the windshield, inches from my face, as if the truck itself had a flute built into its bones. I laid on the air horn. The sound bounced off the gorge and came back torn. Under it, 2 clean notes threaded the roar like a needle. We hit the Narrows, that stone throat where the world pinches to a single lane. Something tapped the roof in a rhythm I didn't know, 2 fast knocks, 1 slow, then dragged a fingernail over the paint with a squeal that cut straight down my spine. I gripped the wheel and kept my eyes on the white line sprayed with salt. The passenger belt tightened again, pulling across my chest now as if a second belt had found me, pinning me back. The buckle on the other side frosted white and began to sing all on its own, metal humming like a mouth whistling through a keyhole. "Not stopping," I said, "not for you." The notes dipped, unhappy. They changed key. For a second they sounded like the start of something I knew, my uncle's work whistle from when I was a kid, but the tune bent wrong. We rounded the last switchback before town. Down in the black pocket of the valley, a scatter of lights looked like fallen stars caught in trees. The whistle grew faint, like it hated the lights. At the first sign for Silverton, the passenger belt clicked loose. The seat foam rose. The door opened 2 inches and let out a ribbon of cold that moved like a thing. It carried the 2 notes with it, a little louder for a heartbeat, like someone stepping out of a church and finishing a song in the open air. The door shut. The cab warmed a degree. My shoulders came down from around my ears and I realized how long I'd been clenching my jaw. I parked by the closed gas station, hands shaking, and sat there until the heater beat the frost back. The windshield held one last fog mark on the passenger side, a perfect circle you could measure with your thumb and forefinger. In the center, a line had been drawn through it, neat and straight, like someone had pressed a fingernail in the wet. No mouth. That's what it meant, I think. Or maybe that's just what I tell myself. I don't run that route after midnight anymore. But sometimes, even in town, I'll walk past my truck and hear the passenger belt retract on its own, the soft ratchet of fabric sliding home. Once, weeks later, I turned the radio on in my driveway to check the weather. Static. Then those two notes, clean and close, right in my ear, and a word spoken by nobody, using my own breath to shape it through the speaker. Answer. People joke about last chair like it's a badge. You get one more run. You beat the dark. Up here, last chair is a promise you make to the mountain, and sometimes the mountain answers. I was the closer on the ridge lift above Loveland Pass. Late March. Wind hard enough to make the towers hum. Dusk running out fast, that deep blue that makes the snow look like smoke. We were sweeping trails. Patrol was counting heads. I kept the lift turning slow so any stragglers could slide in and ride out. The bullwheel moaned like a big animal sleeping. Oil and cold metal. The counter in the shack ticked each chair number as it passed. I knew that count by heart. That night it said there was one more chair on the line than we had. Ghost count, I told myself. It happens. Sensors freeze. Numbers stick. I watched the cable roll in. Empty seats one after another. Vinyl slick with rime, safety bars rattling in the wind. Then one came through with the seat wet in two ovals like somebody had just stood up. Melted drips froze in little beards along the lip. The bar had finger marks in the frost. Not prints from inside where you grab, but streaks from the outside like someone had pushed it down from behind. I wiped the seat with my glove. My fingers stuck for a second, the cold biting through. On the backrest, in thin white crystals, someone had written with the side of a hand, "Don't get off." I laughed, a small wrong sound. Radioed the top shack. "Top, you copy, you see anyone?" Static, then my own voice came back, thin and flat like the mountain was a tape recorder. "Don't get off." The lift couldn't run empty all night. We had to sweep the line. I stepped out into the track and let the next chair scoop me up. The bar came down by itself, slower than a person would do it, locking with a dull click. The footrest swung against my boots. I tried to push the bar up. It didn't move. I told myself it was ice in the hinge. I told myself a lot fast. We climbed. The sound of the cable was a low saw, steady, almost soft. Spindrift lifted off the ridge in sheets, stinging my cheeks like glass. Tower bells pinged as we passed, those little brass tongues shaking on their own even when the chair didn't hit them. My headlamp drew a tight cone. For a few seconds between towers there was nothing but wind and the feeling of space under my boots. The highway down on the pass glowed with two lonely sets of headlights drifting like fireflies. We were higher than the road now, higher than the last trees. I could smell the old lift grease, and under it something colder. The kind of cold that feels like a hand inside your coat. At Tower 7, the chair ahead of me bounced. There was no chair ahead of me. The count said I was last, but the shadows moved like there was weight on the line. I heard the top shack generator cut off, then on again like someone had kicked the plug. The window up there was black, no lantern, no silhouette. The raise bar sign at the unload ramp was rhymed over. As we slid under the light, the frost letters changed. The words ran like wet chalk and spelled new ones. "Keep it down." I braced to unload anyway. Knees ready, butt up off the seat. The chair didn't slow. The unload ramp was just a drift, no groom mark, no ski scratches. The bullwheel turned quiet, too quiet. The cable didn't bend around it like it always did. It kept going straight, out past the lift shack into the mouth of the wind, toward a line of towers I swear we didn't have. Old shapes stood on the ridge like rusted crosses. Far below, the tail lights on US 6 winked and were gone in the spindrift. My radio hissed. A voice came through, distant, grainy, older than our gear. "Last chair," it said like a welcome. "Over the pass." We didn't have a speaker up there. We didn't have towers out there either. But my chair didn't turn. It carried me off the map, into a span that isn't on any lift report, with the bar locked tight around my waist and the wind singing like wire in my teeth. I stared at the cable ahead because if I looked down, I knew I'd see nothing that made sense. The towers out there weren't ours. They were tall, narrow X-frames with rivets like old ship bones. The sheaves looked wooden, rimmed in ice, spinning slow without sound. Every time the cable slipped over one, the tower bell pinged a single note, tentative as if it was waking up after years. "Top, you copy," I said into the radio. "Patrol base anyone." A voice came back thin and far. "Last chair." Not a question, a greeting. "Who is this?" Silence. Then my own voice answered me, a recording that never happened. "Don't get off." I kept my hands on the bar. The metal was so cold my glove stuck to it. I felt a pressure on my right side, a slow lean as if someone had shifted their weight next to me. The seat didn't dip. My brain told me it did, but the chair stayed level. The footrest bumped against my boots like a nervous leg. A faint smell of old wool and cold tobacco threaded through the lift grease, a scent from another time. The wind cleared for a heartbeat and the sky opened. A deep hard blue punched with stars, and I saw below us a line of chairs that shouldn't be there, crossing under ours at an angle. Wooden slats, rope backs, tiny square numbers burned into the ends. For a second I thought I saw people riding them, big jackets, white crusted around their hoods. But when I blinked, the chairs were empty. Snow had carved round hollows where bodies should have been. The next tower loomed close enough to touch. The bell didn't ping this time. It rattled with a dry clatter that sounded like teeth. On the backrest in front of me, frost bloomed and a message wrote itself, a smear moving like a gloved hand. "Write it." "I'm not," I started, and my right hand moved anyway. It came off the bar and pressed the side of my glove against the vinyl, dragging slow. My fingers were my own and not my own. I watched the letters come out shaky in the rhyme. "Don't get off." I pulled back hard. The glove left a clean stripe through the crystals and my stomach dropped because the curve of my writing matched the message I saw in the bay. It was mine. I had already written it, or I hadn't yet. The lift hummed like it was laughing. We passed a structure that looked like a top shack made of shadow, the suggestion of walls, a window cut on nothing, a bullwheel with no hub. My chair didn't bend. It ran straight through the ghost, the cable never sagging. Beyond it, the ridge fell away and the lights of US 6 showed in broken bits through spindrift like coins at the bottom of water. I could hear the real resort calling in my head. Lights off, sweep done, everyone gone. And the sound only made this part feel more true. At last the cable began to angle toward a shape I recognized. Our actual bullwheel, our shack, dark and square against the night. The raise bar sign flickered under its crust and the letters slumped. "Keep it down," it told me one more time. I wanted off more than I've wanted anything. My knees came up. The bar didn't move. The unload ramp slid under us, too fast, too slow, and the bullwheel filled my world. At the exact moment the chair should have turned, the latch on the bar popped like a knuckle. My body knew before my mind did. I shoved it up, rolled, and dropped into the drift. The snow hit me like a wall. I tumbled, swallowed powder, tasted cold metal. When I came up, the chair was already past me, the bar swinging down again on its own. It didn't slow. It didn't turn. It slipped by the shack and kept going toward that thin mouth of wind. I crawled into the bay coughing. The shack door stuck, then gave. Inside, the clock on the wall was wrong. The minute hand jittered back and forth between two ticks. The counter screen blinked. Our lift should have had 68 chairs. It read 69, then 68, then 69 again, like it couldn't decide if something was on the line or not. On the logbook under last chair, a name had been written and erased so many times the paper had worn through. In the fog on the window, fresh letters formed, small as if someone wrote with a fingertip. "Over the pass." I ran the slow stop, shut the drive, and pulled the breaker. The bullwheel sighed down, heavy, lazy. The cable kept humming in my bones anyway. I stood in the bay and listened to a few more pings, faint and far, like a wind chime on a porch you can't find. They asked me later why the last chair came back with the bar frozen down and my glove print on the backrest. I lied. I said the hinge was sticky and I warmed it with my hand. I didn't say I wrote the message I had already seen. I didn't say the count sometimes shows an extra chair even when the lift is empty. Or that on certain nights, when the temperature drops just right, the bells on Tower 7 ping once on their own, and my radio, dead and dark, crackles with my own voice telling me something I will do and haven't done yet. I close the lift now before the light goes, but the mountain remembers. When the wind is up and the sky goes that bruised color over Loveland, I still hear a polite little ping, and the feeling of a bar settling across my lap comes out of nowhere, as real as a hand. And somewhere past our top shack, in air where no cable should run, a chair I will always be on keeps traveling into the night. Out here, the mountains remember every breath, every note, every chair that failed to turn. If you made it to the end, take one slow breath and listen. Is your room breathing back? Do you hear two clean notes near the window? Did a bar you can't see just settle across your chest? These stories are true in the way that matters. They stay with you when the lights go out. Which story scared you the most? Comment below, share this with a friend who swears they don't scare, and hit subscribe with the bell so you never miss our next true horror. Sleep easy tonight if the high country lets you, and if it calls, don't answer.